welcome once again to In Search of the Crystal Skull, an epic, exciting adventure into the world of mediocrity. My name is Aaron.
My name is Patricia.
Hey, Patricia. So, today we were going to do something we thought would be special, which is we were going to be comparing It's a Mad, 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 Mad World to another film, which would later come out in 2001, called Rat Race. Unfortunately, we discovered something which was a bit of a technicality. So, what happened is that Rat Race, we thought, was 64% on Rotten Tomatoes. We've just found out that's the audience score. The actual score on the tomatometer at Rotten Tomatoes for Rat Race 2001 is actually 44%. So, unfortunately, it's not within the realm of our discussion. So, instead, we are just going to be solely talking about It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. And to be honest with you, though, through 2 hours and 39 minutes of this movie, there is a lot of madness to go through. So, don't think that just because we don't have Rat Race involved in this doesn't mean we aren't going to be engaged in a very long discussion.
Yes, indeed. Like, oh man, this movie is just balls to the wall insane. Like, there is so many things that are going on in this movie that we definitely need to sit down and have a talk on.
And by the way, this movie, from what I know, is actually originally like over 3 hours long. So we watched the abridged version of this.
Yeah, we did. So, as you guys know, over the years, this movie was released in theaters and it was 3 hours and 12 minutes. And over time, this movie, when it was released on VHS, they actually had to divide it into two parts, very similar to like if you were watching Titanic, in which like part one, you would watch, some parts of the movie, and then part two, you would watch the other parts of the movie. And then eventually, when it was released on DVD, then they were able to like shorten it more and more until eventually around 2013 was when the Criterion Collection released the one that is mostly available nowadays, which is the one that is about 2 hours and 39 minutes.
Yeah. So, I mean, in regards to the way this movie is put together, I mean, keep this in mind. This was brought up around about the 1960s, like the early 1960s. So, the theater experience at the time, from what I understand, is that it would be kind of like going to actually see a live production. So, there would be like when the lights go down, there'd be like this musical beginning that would basically bring you into the realm of what you're going to watch. And then it's kind of like if anyone's ever seen the Ten Commandments, which is not the cartoon version, like the one starring strangely enough no,
Charlton Heston.
Charlton Heston, there we go. And also, it's strangely enough stars Vincent Price as well, which is kind of a weird casting when you think about all the modern stuff that he's appeared in. But in regards to how you compare, I guess you compare the Ten Commandments to It's a Mad, 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 Mad World, is that it has a musical beginning, so there's no like action or anything on the screen or anything like that. It literally just plays up the band to tell you basically what the atmosphere of the movie is basically going to be. And then halfway through the movie, well, in this case, it was about an hour and 39 minutes, so we actually got an intermission, which we literally took, because we had so much stuff thrown at us in the first 1.5 acts of this movie that we had to take a break, and then we had to come back down and finish it off again. So.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess it's like, the case of like old drive-in films from like the 50s and 60s in which like, you watch a film and then as time goes on, you have an intermission so you can grab your popcorn and your soda or you go to the bathroom or something. So yeah, that was kind of a shock. It's like, oh, there's an intermission. So, hey, Aaron, do you want to go grab something to eat or something? And then he's like, okay. And then about like 10 minutes later, we decided to sit back down and watch it, even though in the movie, it lasted for like 3 seconds or something?
Yeah, but by the way, yeah, that's the one thing I should point out. The intermission is not in real time. So, you bid for 3 seconds and then the movie just starts again. So you basically have to insert your own intermission in this movie, and that's what people kind of thought about. Like, oh, hey, it's an old movie. Like, they have like a 10-minute intermission, like in the middle of the film. It's like, and that'll make up like some the 2 hours and 39 minutes we had to sit through. Nope. Totally not. We had a lot of madness to go through. So, I think in regards to the whole setting, I mean, like, it's a typical 1960s movie. I think we can probably say it's
Yeah.
got that. It's got a lot of dialogue to it. I mean, like it was like switching from like being more dialogue and story driven. I think it was like caught between like the middle of like giving because now if you look at movies today, like there's a lot of storytelling in like the physical aspects of the movie, like Ratatouille for example, like all the storytelling's done through like the physical actions of Linguini being controlled by Remy on top of his head. That type of kind of storytelling, which Pixar is now known for. But in this, obviously, a lot of the dialogue and a lot of the story is paramount to driving this movie forward. And all the action is kind of like I would definitely say kind of thrown in for comedic purposes. I think you could
Hmm.
say so. Like. In order to get what's going on, I mean, like, you need to kind of like listen into, like, the one time, when they were explaining like what they were going to do with the money that they were going to do with this, like, they were ending, like, there's a scene that goes on for like 5 or 6 minutes of like them just arguing about the shares and things like that. And
Yes.
maybe back in the day, maybe that type of humor was funny, but we just kind of sat there like, this when's this scene going to end? You know?
Yeah, like here's the thing. Like the story itself is very basic. The only thing that really draws you in to the film is all of the slapstick comedy, all the bad situations that happen to all the characters, and just the insanity that is going on in every single corner. You have everything from explosions to fires to beat ups to drowning to people hanging on the ladder to dancing. It just goes all over the place with its insanity. And I think that's what the appeal of this movie is that you have to understand that even though for maybe the modern audience, when they watch this movie, it's like, oh, it's just a bunch of people getting money. But you have to understand in the 60s, this was a big deal because some of the biggest comedians and actors of their time are featured in this movie or are cameos in this movie. You have from Milton Berle, Mickey Rooney, Buddy Hackett, you have Terry Thomas, Jonathan Winters, Ethel Merman. I mean, even people in the background that, or even people who show up for like briefly, like the Three Stooges, Carl Reiner, Edward Everett Horton, and Don Knotts. I mean, if you don't know who any of these people are, you're probably not going to get the reference or even like, oh, this person's in this movie. Oh, that's really cool. I mean, it's kind of like if you're watching The Muppets, for example, in which like they added in celebrities, so who are in like a few moments or maybe are in the course of the film, and you're like, oh, that's really cool that this person's in this movie. So it for the appeal of this movie being like a huge comedy where there's a lot of slapstick and there's a lot of crazy shenanigans going on. I mean, it draws you into like that kind of stuff. It's like if a live action Looney Tunes short were stretched to about 2 hours long. So that's what the appeal of this movie is for a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, really,
And
like if you really think about it, like I think I guess you could argue you could say that 2 hours of the movie was dedicated to like slapstick humor and physical comedy. I think you
yeah,
could say, yeah.
yeah. As for whether this would work for a modern audience in which like we're used to like much more quicker jokes, like I mean, sure, the slapstick thing is like permeant throughout this entire movie for the most part, which is very akin to what you would see around the 50s and 60s. But I think today's humor is much more diverse. You not only have the slapstick, but you also have like quick, sharp wit. You also have maybe some alliteration. You have maybe some song numbers that would be really funny. So, we've come a long way when it comes to our comedy.
Yeah, I mean, in regards to here's the thing about this though, like it's I get that some people around that time are gonna find some fun in this movie and probably will look at it as some like nostalgic value because it has like some of their beloved actors and actresses and comedians that were there at the time. But just because it's filled full of stars doesn't necessarily mean that it's actually going to be a good movie. Because do I have to remind everybody? Who was it? Christina McMillan, John Travolta, Dwayne Johnson, Uma Thurman, and Vince Vaughn were all in a film called Be Cool. and that was a
Oh.
train wreck, pretty much. So, like, yeah, just because it has star power behind it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to have good writing for it. But here's the thing about this now. For anyone that starts jumping up and down, I'm not comparing Be Cool. It's a mad, 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 mad world to Be Cool. That's not what I'm doing at all. I'm just making the statement that just because you fill it full of stars doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be like the best movie ever told. You know, like.
That's true, and we've also had our fair share of a ton of DreamWorks movies that suffer from the same problem. They have a ton of celebrity power, but if they don't have a good script, then it's gonna all fall apart.
Well, you can say that about any 3D animation film now. Like, they just get any stars to like do it. Like, remember the, actually, there's actually a film actually literally called The Star. That stars like Oprah Winfrey and like every other American, popular star that is you can probably, name for this telling of like, the birth of Jesus.
Yeah.
So it's in regards to how you come up with your story. Like, you don't necessarily need big star actors in order to. Yeah, you need them to get eyeballs, obviously, for for getting people through the doors. But in regards to like whether you're gonna say you're gonna get a good story out of it, I got to walk on that. I'm really sorry, but anyway, I mean, like, just going on with the music of this film. The music is fun. You can only tell you that.
Oh yeah,
Like,
the music is a lot of fun for sure. Props to Ernest Gold for the amazing soundtrack.
yeah. So, I mean, like, also I actually do like the idea of like playing the music before the movie actually starts.
Yeah,
Like,
I just wish there was just something on the screen, you know? I mean, I can understand, like, it's akin to, like, if you were watching a stage show in which, like, you have some background music so that people can get into their seats and, people can be able to settle down right before the show begins. But in a movie, staring at a blank screen for almost 2 minutes is kind of tiring.
yeah, I mean, like, don't get me wrong. I mean, like, I remember when I went to go see the Rugrats movie for the first time, and I know there's like massive debate about the Rugrats movie, but they actually played some of the soundtrack before the movie actually began, which kind of got you into the idea that you're going to watch like one of the biggest Nickelodeon movies of all time.
Yeah,
Like,
that's where they should have, put it in for like that. I'm sure that that's what they did at the time. It's like they would play it for the movie screen. It's like, okay, the movie's gonna start, and the music is playing in the background, and you're just like, settling yourself in with your popcorn and your soda at hand, and then the credits play, and then you're like, okay, the movie's about to start. So
yeah.
I guess that was what the original intention was.
I guess so, yeah. And mind you, I think what they do now today, like like say for example, like Monsters Inc. or something like that, like they'll play the music, but then they'll give you like some graphical intro to kind of like go along with it. So like to bring you into the and actually that was an important thing that the intro is so important in movies because it's going to decide whether you're actually going to sit down and enjoy this movie or how you're going to feel about this film. Like, do you remember when they talked about originally for Monsters Inc. that they were just going to go cold into like the scream tester and everything like that, and actually they decided they were going to leave the 2D credits to like the end of the movie, but instead they decided to put them on the front to like show that this is a comedic time that you're going to have. Everything like that. So I mean, like I think on top of that as well, they do the same thing here, except they drag it out for like 6 minutes. So like that's the only complaint I have about it. Like it just goes on for a long time. So maybe they were just kind of like building up to the fact that this was going to be a big deal. Like the amount of people like Don Knotts is in this movie, the Three Stooges is in this movie. I mean, in the abridged version, they're basically just kind of shown on camera for like 3 seconds. But I mean, I'm guessing they probably had a bigger role like in the longer version. I mean, we'll never know, I guess, because I'm not sure if we're ever going to find 3 hours of our lives to ever sit through this again. But like in regards to like how big of a spectacle this was going to be. Probably in 1963, this was going to be a huge deal, I think, for a lot of people. So I guess I shouldn't be too surprised that they kind of like build this up as much as they could.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, it's like you have to understand that this was the 1960s. This was like when the Three Stooges were like way past retirement at this point. So it's like I believe this was like one of the last roles that they showcased because Curly was in there, and Curly unfortunately passed away about a few years later until he was replaced. And the Three Stooges, a lot of people know about them because of their work during like the the golden age of cinema, which was like around the 30s and 40s. So, a lot of people knew about them. A lot of people know about Don Knotts. A lot of people know about Milton Berle and Mickey Rooney and Buddy Hackett. I mean, Buster Keaton is in this movie, who was a huge uh, silent comedian, akin to something like Charlie Chaplin. So he's in this movie as well. And, he's barely there. And then there's Stan Freberg, who a lot of people know for his voiceover roles in stuff such as Looney Tunes or Lady and the Tramp. And Sterling Holloway is there as one of the firemen. And a lot of people know him as like the voice of, the Cheshire Cat or Winnie the Pooh around the 1960s. So, yeah, I mean, so there are a lot of like bit roles in this movie for a lot of these actors, these well-known actors at their time. But yeah, for the most part, I mean, they just like come and go pretty quickly. I mean, the stuff with Don Knotts, I mean, you have that one scene in which like he's just driving, minding his own business, and then all of a sudden, one of the men who's like after the money, he's like, "Hey, pull me over. I need to get to a phone," and then he's like, driving him, and he's getting nervous because the helicopter the police helicopter is like right behind him, and he's like really nervous, and he pretends that he's gonna try to get away, but the other guy's like saying, no, just drop me off at the restaurant. I'm gonna I just get to a phone, call the CIA, and then without knowing, he steals his car, and that's the last we ever see of Don Knotts.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, in regards to like the amount of characters we have here. By the way, we're not short of characters here.
Oh no.
Yeah, like it is a huge cast that we've got here, and so we got Spencer Tracy that plays Captain T.G. Culpepper. We got Milton Berle who plays J. Russell Finch. We got Sid Caesar who plays Melville Crump, and we got Buddy Hackett who plays Benji. We got Ethel Merman who plays Mrs. Marcus. We got Mickey Rooney who plays Ding Bell. We got Dick Shawn who plays Sylvester. We got Phil Silvers who plays Otto Meyer, and we got Terry Thomas who plays Lieutenant Colonel Algernon Hawthorne. We got Jonathan Winters who plays Lenny Pike. We got Edie Adams who plays Monica Crump, and we got Dorothy Provine who plays Emmeline Marcus Finch in this movie as well. So you probably imagine, and on top of that as well, there's not only that, there's like the supporting cast as well, and like everyone there is like either some sort of name or has like is known in some capacity. So it's I don't think we'll ever. The one thing I will say about it's a mad world is that unless you're gonna like pour like a really serious amount of cash into a movie, I don't think you're ever gonna see something like this again. I don't think.
No,
Really.
and they tried multiple times. I guess, again, the equivalent would have been Rat Race from 2001, but even then, they didn't have as big of a cast as this.
Yeah, exactly. But that's what I'm saying about this. Like, I mean, are we ever going to see, and keep this in mind, like, big Hollywood actors now are not just, tied to, like, different studios. At this point. So, like, can you ever see a time where, like, all these, like, massive names are all going to, like, appear just in one movie? Like,
that's kind of hard to say because, depending on the movie, I mean, I know that they tried to do this with like movie 43, which was like a disaster of a movie. Many people called it like one of the worst movies of all time. And that had a large cast of celebrities in there. So yeah, I mean, like with it working as well as it did, I mean, I don't know if we'll ever see anything like this again.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, in regards to the one thing I will say about about this movie is that it's parodied so many times. Like, there's even, it's probably no surprise that The Simpsons or also parodied this as well. Like, there was the cat burglar episode where the cat burglars, Malore, who finally gets captured, tells everybody that he's holding like his all his stolen property like under a big T, and obviously that's a parody to It's a Mad World. Like everyone rushing off to go find it, only to find out that it's actually a distraction for him to escape. So I mean, like there's so many times that the other comedies have somewhat tributed It's a Mad World by putting elements of the movie into their own stuff. So it's if you notice that if you watch this movie and then you go watch your favorite comedy shows again, you will see it's elements of this movie in there. So
Yeah, exactly.
it has had an inspiration on the business, pretty much.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, like if you were to know about a concept about like a group of people getting together and chasing after something that'll make their lives better, then most likely it does come from It's a Mad World. And this was like the beginning of like a series of films that try to do this exact thing. The Scavenger Hunt and various others, and then eventually I think Rat Race with 2001. I think was like one of the last that really tried to do this kind of concept about like, hey, we have a group of people and they're trying to find a bunch of money and they're gonna, fight to no end to get it. So yeah, I mean, we haven't had a movie like this since, and every time that they try to do it, a lot of people critique it, saying it's just a weaker version of "It's a Mad, 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 Mad World."
Hmm.
So, I mean, a lot of people say that it's one of their favorite movies. I mean, James Rolfe, aka the Angry Video Game Nerd, calls it his all-time favorite movie ever made, which is interesting. Considering that, when you think of James Rolfe, you think of, he loves action and horror movies. So the fact that he loves this comedy is pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean his MOs, usually like horror and stuff like that. So like I
Yeah,
think
he loves horror, he loves science fiction, he loves action. So to hear about that his favorite movie of all time is a comedy is actually pretty interesting.
it is, yeah, and so I mean, it's in regards to like how we feel about this. I mean, like, I guess one thing that other people like who admire this movie are able to kind of like put themselves back into that time period where and give a lot of fair play to this type of movie. But I think in regards to the fact that we've been kind of spoiled, I think like in the 90s and in the 2000s, or like all these like other comedies and like all these other blockbusters as well. I think I guess that's kind of like dampened our appreciation, I guess, for this movie. I think that'd be kind of fair to
Yeah,
say.
especially since we had never seen this movie. We went at it with fresh eyes.
Hmm. So. So yeah, I mean, like, here's the thing about this. If you go to IMDb, you can actually see like how much of an influence this movie has had. Like, there's been reference to it made in like places like Gossip Girl, in Total Drama Island, of all things. Chicken Run has also made references to it as well. The Blues Brothers movie has also reference to It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. Like, I mean, like it's had such a lasting legacy on comedy, and not only just comedy as well, but even serious things as well. So like I think it's fair to say that even though it's not really, I would say, stood a massive amount in the stand of the test of time, I would definitely say that its legacy for decades to come, I think will definitely be seen.
Oh yeah, sure. The legacy is still there. I mean, the AFI has listed it many times on their list as like one of the best comedies of all time. It's number 40 in 100 years, 100 laughs. So, it has still stood the test of time as, this groundbreaking and influential film that has been parodied and referenced so many times in so much media. But as a standalone film, how do we feel about it personally, knowing that we had never seen this movie, but we do know about its references and its influence in media?
Yeah, I just think that in this movie on its own, I mean, here's the thing about this. I know this is probably going to be a very petty, criticism for myself and definitely for other movie-loving fans that are going to be watching this review. But I mean, dare I say, like for 2 hours and 39 minutes, it's a pretty long sit. It really is.
It is very long. And here's the thing, like we're watching the abridged version. If we would have sat through the 3 hour and 12-minute version, we would have been dead. Well, I mean, like,
no, we
like
wouldn't be
we
dead.
would,
I just think we've just been
I mean,
like we would have
we
to
would have been
watch it in
tired.
shifts. We would have to watch it in shifts. There's a reason why we actually literally sat for intermission to to do that for like, and that was like the 2 hour version. But in regards to like the 3 hour version, I think we wouldn't be watching it all in one sitting.
Oh no, no. I mean, even if we were to watch like a movie that was even shorter, I mean, we would have still had to take some breaks. I mean, unless of course we were fully invested in it. I mean, even you said so yourself, Aaron, that the Ten Commandments, which is an over 4 hour long movie, you would have probably taken some breaks watching that, even though many people considered it to be like one of the greatest.
Mind you, like in regards to the Ten Commandments, I mean, I think maybe I have like a religious bias towards it. Maybe maybe we both do. I'm not too sure, but I mean, like it's. I think in regards to the Ten Commandments, I think the fact that it's just it feels more like you can be more invested in a story I think, in the Ten Commandments, and I think you can be with "It's a Mad, 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 Mad World." Because really, when you strip it down, I mean, let's look at the basics of it. It's a story about a bunch of greedy people finding out about a treasure from a dead guy, and then lying to the police about it, and then going off to try and search for it for themselves, while the police are all tracking them and seeing who gets there first, and then all hijinks ensue and everything else goes along the line. So it's like it's one of those big traveling adventures, if anything.
Yes, I guess it's true. With the Ten Commandments, you're only focusing on Moses. I mean, bits and of with the other characters, but with this movie, you're focusing on at least like 10 different characters.
That's another thing as well. Like, I mean, there is a lot of scene, and not only that, the scenes actually go on for a pretty long time. And not only that, you're kind of hard to kind of concentrate on one thing at a time. So I mean, at one point, we had a guy floating around in a canal in his Cadillac. We had another guy trying to fly a plane while the pilot was drunk, and knocked out of the back of the plane. Then you had you had the mother-in-law and them going through, and then you had his mother-in-law's son, crying his eyes out, driving all the way up to Plaster City, and then you had the couple that are flying in the biplane, which is falling apart, and then you so I mean, all the scenes that we were going through that were all going on at once, I can barely put on one hand.
And that's just the surface of it. There's also the scene in which the truck driver is being betrayed multiple times, and he has to find different vehicles so he can ride on, and then he's being tied over by the people in the gas station when the other guy tells him, "Oh, he's a crazy lunatic. Don't worry, we're gonna call the asylum to pick him up." And then he starts beating up the gas station employees, and then literally breaks their business apart and then steals their truck. Then there's also the scene in which when the police are tracking them down, you have another major police officer who wants to get a hold of the money because his wife and his daughter are falling apart in their relationship, and he wants to just get away from them all. Then there's also another one where one of the guys, he's leaving his wife and his mother-in-law behind so that he can be able to go with this British guy that he just met up with along the way. It's so much that is going on.
Mm-hmm. So, I just think that in regards to, the amount of stuff that's currently... That's another thing as well, I mean, one of our main complaints, I think, of some movies is that it's just so padded with, so much stuff that's currently going on. It's so... In a way, it becomes... some aspects of it become funny, but then there's other bits that become distracted. I mean, I don't know about you, Patricia, but I wasn't overly invested of when, the couple were kind of, locked in the cellar. Trying
I
to
wasn't either. It was just they would. Here's the thing. You would think that they would have been the first ones there because they flew on the plane all the way over to Santa Rosa. They were the first ones who arrived, and they were going over to the store so that they can be able to pick up some shovels and picks. But they arrived just when the store was about to close, and then the owner comes in and locks the door, not knowing that they were downstairs. And so throughout this entire time, they were trying to get themselves to escape, and they did everything from beating the door with a sledgehammer to exploding the wall and all that kind of stuff. I was just like, oh my God, this is going on and on and on. Yeah. And this is a major complaint. And I know this was the 1960s, and I can understand that, but the women in this movie are just either really, 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 really annoying, especially, with Ethel Merman's portrayal as the mother-in-law, or they're just downright useless. You have the wives in this movie who either do nothing, complain, or make problems even worse than what it already was. Going back into the scene in which the couple were stuck in the basement with all the tools and supplies. I mean, she's like, "Oh, honey, can you please go upstairs and beat down the door with a sledgehammer one more time?" And he's trying to go upstairs, not knowing that the stairs have already been decimated with the fire that just happened with the explosion. And he's like, "Oh, honey, I don't think we can do this." And he's like, "Please just do it for me." And when he does it, he swings the sledgehammer, the stairs fall down, and it was like, what was the point of that scene? It just makes her look useless.
Yeah, it's I mean, mind you, I guess in some cases, I think that the fact that sometimes the women are kind of parked to the one side. I mean, if you were dealing with these bumbling idiots, wouldn't you rather be on the sidelines of all of this as well?
thing. Like, there's another scene with the wife of Finch and her mother. She was like telling Culpepper, not knowing that he was a police officer, is like, she was the first person who knew where the money was because she saw that the palm trees had a W in it. And she was just about to tell him, it's like, I want to just take the money and I just want to go away. I just want to go away from my mom. I want to go away from my husband and I just want to be happy. And then finally, the truck driver discovers it. And so they start digging. And then she's like, oh, at least I was happy for at least 5 minutes. It's like, why couldn't you get it yourself?
Oh, yeah, I know. But I guess they could say that's the joke. But
that's a stupid joke. It makes... I'm telling you, I just hate, movies like this in which they just portray the women as just so useless. It's like, oh, I'm just the housewife and I just do whatever, is done to me. It's like she's acting like she's in an abusive relationship.
It's a dated trope, isn't it? Like, it's unfortunately, like, it's, and mind you, I guess you could say that it was kind of backwards when you think about it, because if you think, like, when did Wizard of Oz come out? Like, 20 years before?
Yeah, it came out in 20 years before. It came out in 1939.
Yeah, like, imagine, I guess you could say Dorothy is probably not the greatest example of, like, a strong female protagonist, I guess you could say. But, I mean, like, in regards to where we are with this movie, yeah, it's, the women in this movie just aren't portrayed. I thought as well, a lot of them are, one of them's objectified to hell in this movie, like, with the mother-in-law's son who's, like, having, like, dancing in, like, her underwear or something like that.
What the hell was that scene about? I mean, I know what it was supposed to be. It was supposed to be funny, but this was like completely random. I was like, what the hell are we watching? It's like, I get it. This was supposed to be a funny scene. It was supposed to come out of nowhere, especially since everybody's been going through hell. It's like, it was like, well, that existed.
Yeah. I don't know if like it was supposed to be kind of like a luau or something like that, but then why would you not just put it like...
If it was a luau, it would have been decorated like a luau.
Well,
he
did have tiki short. He did have Easter Island people kind of like looking around. Like, I know that's not Hawaii, but he did he looked like he was. It did look like something that we would see in Hawaii, like the way he decorated his house. I don't know, like.
I don't even know. I mean, thinking about it now, yeah, it's like, oh, this is funny because, it's these people in their underwear and they're dancing and, it's supposed to be like lightening the mood after what we've seen throughout the portion of the movie. But just looking at it, it's like,
I guess because they were building him up to like, oh, hey, he's this reliable kind of like, mother's boy and everything like that. But instead he's just like wild party animal. If anything, he's like totally unreliable.
Carry on throughout the rest of the movie. You have one part of the movie in which, like, it's like, it was described that he was unreliable and he's a troublemaker and he's an idiot or something like that. But then the moment that he leaves, to go pick up his mother, he's like a mama's boy. He's like crying. It's like, don't worry, mom, I'm gonna get you. And then when he sees Finch and he hears about like, oh, he tried to, abuse my mom by getting the keys and then driving off and leaving her away. It's like, then he becomes reliable. It's like the character is so inconsistent.
Maybe he's drunk. Like, in the movie you see him having a beer, having like, a can of Budweiser. So like maybe he's already pre-game before he goes out. I don't know. Like yeah.
I don't know. I just think it was like humor for humor's sake, and they just decided, oh, we need to have a funny scene because we've seen these characters go through hell. It's like, oh, why don't we have this character who just so happens to be the son of this character, and let's have something funny going on. And then it just like completely has a 180 with like little to no reason.
Mm-hmm. I think one thing that also kind of takes me out of it as well, when you really think about it, all of these characters are kind of very unlikable in a way.
Here's the thing. I think that was the point of the movie.
It was, like, yeah, but like when you have unlikable characters and someone you can't really root for, it does kind of like take you away from like you're just watching stuff on a screen. Like
here's the thing.
Not invested.
Here's the thing. They try to make them likable. I mean, the truck driver, he's been going through so many things. I mean, he his truck was, he crashed over to like Finch, his wife, and the mother-in-law. And so, he gets abandoned. And so he sees a guy driving by and he's like, okay, please give me a ride. He tried to take a bicycle and ride all the way through. So he meets up with this other guy and he's like, please, give me a ride because of this. And then he betrays him and then he drove off. And then, throughout the course of the movie, he tries teaming up with the mother-in-law and the daughter, and they're constantly bickering and complaining to him. It's like, I guess out of all the characters, he's supposed to be the likable one. But then you also have the argument about, oh, maybe Culpepper is the likable one because of all the stuff that he's been going through. He's a police officer, and, he's at the point of retirement. But, he's having, marital issues with his wife, and, his daughter is about to leave and, go somewhere else. And, he's trying to, have the last years of his life. So, he's been on this case for 15 years, and he thinks that he deserves the money because of all the work that he's been putting in. And he wants to, tell his wife, go to Hawaii and we'll have a vacation. But in reality, he wants to take the money and drive over to the Mexican border. So I get, but I guess that he's the, like, I don't know. Like, you're right. Like, for the most part, these characters are unlikable. But the point of the movie is that this is what greed does to people. I mean, we did see that at the beginning of the movie, they try to split the money even, but there were such in disagreement with, like, oh, but, we're going to give you like a share because you were here. You're going to get a share because you went down to the ditch. You're going to get a share because your car was there and all that kind of stuff, which in reality, let's just say that we're going to go into, the 4 people who were involved with this, which, so there were 4, men who went down to the ditch and saw, the death. So if we're going to divide 350,000 to those 4 people, then that would have been about $87,500 each. Now, if we're going to include everybody who was involved in this, so I take it that there was like 7 people, right? So if we're going to divide 350,000 to 7 people, that would have been $50,000. So this whole thing could have been done with them either getting, a good chunk of the money, but because they were so greedy, in the end, none of them get the money.
Mm-hmm. So, that's the movie.
Yeah, that's the movie. I mean, like, the climax with, them hanging in the ladder was a ton of fun, I have to say. A fun fact, by the way, Willis O'Brien did the stop motion effects for some of the scenes of the ladder from the fire truck. And that was the last movie that he did right before he passed away. So Willis O'Brien was a very well-known stop motion artist and cinematographer. He did a lot of things like King Kong, and he did Mighty Joe Young and a whole bunch of other films. So yeah, the fact that this was his last movie and he did that scene is pretty commendable. And I have to say that with all the craziness that's going on with like people falling out of the ladder and crashing into things and falling down from things. I mean, yeah, it was pretty fun for the slapstick, but then it just becomes really underwhelming in the end when the suitcase of money like sprinkles all over, and then everybody who's watching, because there's like some sort of what was it? Was the building being opened or was it being knocked down?
I can't being demolished or something like that. I don't know, but
yeah. So you have a group of people who are like watching an abandoned building, and those people who had absolutely nothing to do with this whole situation, every single one of them, which were a ton of them, they get the money. And then everybody who was involved in the ladder get hospitalized and with broken bones and, a whole bunch of things. They're all, in the hospital. And then the women, walk by, really angry at their husbands because of everything that happened. And then the movie ends with the mother-in-law slipping into a banana peel, and then everybody laughs. It's like, really? That's how you're going to end this movie?
The reason, I mean, the arc that they were going on is that the police chief didn't really have much to laugh about because his whole life was falling apart, and that's the reason why he ended up basically joining the chase to go get the money, and he wanted to run off to Mexico because he was dealing with all the crap in his life. So
yeah, sure,
all he wanted to do was basically just to laugh, and so they just kind of like threw that in as like his completing his arc, saying, oh hey, he can laugh like slipping on a the villain slipping on a banana peel.
That's really weak, in my opinion. Like, it's like, really? Like, you have, like, slapstick comedy 101. A person slipping on a banana peel. I mean, I was expecting, like, her being hit in the face with a pie. So it's like, that was just a very, very disappointing ending, in my opinion. I mean, I didn't expect anybody to get the money, to be quite honest, because with the tropes that we've seen, it's like in the end, either nobody gets the money or the money was a fake to begin with. So I expected that, but I mean, usually in these kind of situations, it's like, sure, you have to laugh at something. It's like, oh, the journey was what brought us together or something like that. But no, it just like person falling on a banana peel. Everybody laughs. The end.
Well,
It's like
it
I'm
is.
sure that they could have done
I
something
guess
better.
maybe the symbolism of it is like it's the classic gag. Maybe like someone slipping on a banana peel. So like I guess in a way I guess you can say it's sort of charming in that way. So
Nah, I don't think so.
well, okay. So, that was It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. So, it's got a lot of physical humor in it, and but dare I say, I think maybe because me and Patricia have just been spoiled with various other, comedy in the modern times. I think we appreciate it for a thing of its time, but whether we would have go out of our way to actually watch it again, I'm not too sure about that.
Probably not, unless of course, if I were to sit down and like watch it, I'll probably watch it in like moments. Like, oh, that moment was pretty funny with them driving, the plane, or this moment was funny in which they were hanging by the ladder. Oh, this moment was funny. As for like sitting through it again for a second time, probably not.
No. Okay, everybody. So that concludes this
Oh, wait,
episode.
wait,
Sorry.
hold on. We need to rank it.
Oh yeah, we do actually need to rank it. Yeah, I do apologize about that. So anyway, everybody, we need to rank this. So I mean, here's the thing about this: I'm actually willing to give it a bit of leeway in regards to this, and so because there was some times I actually did laugh at a couple of things, and there were some things that I actually do like about it. So I would say I would give it a 7. I think.
Yeah, I would give it a 7 as well because I mean, there were some things that were really good in this. I mean, I do love the cast because I mean that some of the cast members in this were the best of their time, and some moments were really funny. It's just that there were most of the characters I didn't really get invested in. There were some scenes that were dragging on for too long. Some moments in which I felt it wasn't there that really made any difference in the plot. The women were useless or annoying in this movie. So yeah, it's a product of its time, and it does held a lot of value in terms of what it did as a comedy, as a feature film, and as a storyline. But I just think of it as a movie of its time, and I don't think is like one of the greatest comedies of all time. If I were to watch like what many people consider to be like one of the classic comedies, I mean, I probably watch like maybe like Soup to Nuts or maybe Airplane or anything like that, as opposed to this. So yeah, I mean, it's a pretty good movie, but definitely not one of my favorites. So I would, give it like a 7 out of 10. It's, I know a lot of people are going to be really, really, really angry about our rating of this movie, but you have to understand that we're looking at it from a first point viewing perspective, and so we didn't grow up with this movie. We just know about the set pieces from like other sources of media. So yeah, I hope that you guys can understand that.
Yeah, I'm sure they will. And the tomatometer is definitely rates with us anyway. So
Yeah, speaking of which, I want to read off some of the reviews of this movie. So I'm
go
just
ahead.
going to pull out a couple of them. So let's take a look at one of them from the critics who took a look at this movie. So yeah, let's take a look at one from let's see. Nathan Rabin from The Dissolve said, "It's a mad, 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 mad world. Remains a technological and creative marvel for reasons beyond its sometimes fitful ability to make audiences laugh." And then we have Danielle Solzman, who says, "It's a mad, 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 mad world is one of the best ensemble comedies, and the star-studded film remains a classic to this day." And then there's some people who didn't really care for this movie. We have Clyde Gilmore from Maclean's Magazine, who said, 3.5 hours of tiresome proof that Stanley Kramer should stick to dramas and leave comedies to his competitors." And then Dwight McDonald from Esquire Magazine said, "Simply too much for the human eye and ear to respond to, let alone the funny bone." So yeah, people do consider it a classic, while others feel that it's just going on for too long, or maybe that Stanley Kramer, who was also known for dramas such as Guess Who's Coming to Dinner and The Defiant Ones, should have stuck to that as opposed to the comedy. So you know what? I think that Stanley Kramer did do a good job, even though that it was like way too long, and some of the aspects of it hasn't really held up in 2020. So yeah, I can just give props to all the people who were involved in this movie. It's definitely not one of the classic comedies that I would just go back to. So I would say that it was pretty decent in its own right.
Mm-hmm. Okay, everybody, that's our review of It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. So we will leave you to go back to your mad, 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 mad world, wherever you are in the world. So, okay. Okay, that's In Search of a Crystal Skull for this episode, and we will see you next time around. Take care, and bye-bye for now.
See you later.